Shalom, shalom. Gotta give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Simeon, Shai, and the blind to the elders and apostles, the great millstone, do rule and teach well. See, I'm brother here, Shamash One, but Yahweh, checking out the news. CNN.com, under the world news section. Amazon launches first Project Kuiper satellites with goal of creating a mega constellation, which is a mega constellation of satellites, not a constellation of stars. So let's check out this video.
Amazon launched a super long-distance delivery, sending its first internet satellite from Cape Canaveral, Florida, into space. It is a major move to compete with Elon Musk's SpaceX. Let's bring in CNN Space and Defense correspondent Kristen Fisher. So what exactly is this satellite for, Kristen?
So these satellites are to Amazon what Starlink is to SpaceX, and that is a massive mega constellation of very small satellites that operate close to Earth in low Earth orbit, and they're designed to essentially blanket the Earth with Wi-Fi internet coverage. And so what we saw this morning, just this hour, about an hour ago, was the launch of those first two prototype satellites for Amazon's answer to Starlink. They call it Project Kuiper. And if today's launch is successful in getting those satellites out, what we could see, the goal of Project Kuiper is to get about 3,500 satellites in low Earth orbit. And then you compare that to what Starlink already has. Starlink already has about 4,000 active Starlink satellites in orbit, so it's well ahead of the competition. And of course, that's meant that Starlink essentially has a monopoly in low Earth orbit in terms of internet connectivity. And of course, we've seen what happened on the ground with the war in Ukraine and how critical those Starlink satellites have been to the Ukrainian military's operations. And so what today's launch signifies is essentially the beginning of the end, perhaps, to SpaceX's monopoly on internet connectivity in low Earth orbit, but they are so far ahead. Amazon has a very long way to go to catch up. So this is great, for Earthlings who want Wi-Fi, but the bad news is there is some downsides. Astronomers really hate the impact that this is having on astronomy. I mean, thousands and thousands of satellites this close to Earth. It interrupts and interferes with their observations. And then there's just the issue of space junk.
I was going to bring that up, yeah.
The government's having such a hard time regulating so many satellites that are up there, and there's a real threat that some of these satellites could collide and create a pretty devastating collision. So there's some good and some bad, like most things in space.
Yeah, exactly. It's not all good.
Just to get to the point. Revelation 18:5, for since I reached into heaven, the Most High have remembered her iniquities, talking about Babylon the Great, which, I go into the 17th chapter, you tie that in pretty much to America, to go to Jeremiah 50, stuff like that, Jeremiah 51, scriptures like that, and you can go into the whole thing. I'm not going to go do that today, but, if you read all those, it'll paint a pretty vivid picture. That's talking about, the U.S. So you see here, for the King James, metaphorically, right? Revelation 18:5, for since I reached into heaven, the Most High remembered iniquities. Metaphorically, all the wickedness they have committed, but also literally, as I reached into space, right? And it reached into space with the satellites and satellite communication, which is how we have the internet. Which is also the unicorn. It's also talked about in it's talked about somewhere. Open books of the firmament. It's this book of 2nd Ezra 6 and 20. On the world that shall begin to vanish, which shall be finished, demolish these tokens. The book shall be opened before the firmament, and they shall see all together. Alright, so pretty much knowledge opened, and the internet, before the firmament, above the firmament, which is the ozone layer, in space. And that's how you're gonna get these lessons. First Revelation 5 that take place with Yahweh Shai opening the understanding of the scriptures. Firstly starting with Abba Bivens, then on down to elders and great men, that under him, and great men under them, going on to our elders and apostles of the great millstone that we have, and under them are the great men that under them are also our elders and so on and so forth, all the way down onto us. So this is appearing to heaven. There's all this stuff, satellites, space stations. Right when the satellites and stuff breaks down and becomes space junk, when it gets defunct, you just leave that shit up there, and that's like a real threat to space stations. That's pretty much it. Shalom.